Topic that comes up pretty often, and it has the last few weeks, getting back to decency in politics. Joining us now to talk about that is a Republican mayor from the city of Troy, Ethan Baker. And Mayor Baker, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse.
Roop, I'm really excited to be here. I'm so happy for you and the show. I think it's awesome. So
thank you. Well, we appreciate it. And it's nice to have you here because we always say we put people over pundits. And I was teasing you, I was joking with you. I said, the mayor of the city of Troy is not professing to be a pundit, but you're not just a regular citizen. You're the mayor. But you had an interesting take on this whole thing. And I know you're not an expert on the national political scene, but you are an avid political watcher. You say that just because Kamala Harris will be in Pennsylvania doesn't necessarily mean that it should be Josh Shapiro. Talk about that.
No, I think it's too obvious, right? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe they're going for obvious, and that's been the pick all along. But
would it be weird to bring out like Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona in Pennsylvania and say, no, this is my guy?
My guess is Kamala Harris polls really well in Philadelphia and the surrounding counties, and that's an important place anywhere that she needs to be. So I don't know. I remember Sarah Palin got rolled out, I think, in Ohio with John McCain.
So it's just a matter of where.
But it could be totally wrong. Could be. I don't know.
It's
very obvious, right?
Nothing is obvious and nothing has been predictable in this particular cycle. But the only thing that has been predictable, sadly, is the decorum that you see, and not just from the politicians themselves, but from people on social media and elsewhere. When you, as a public leader and as someone who's the mayor of a city, you wrote something pretty impactful. You said that a large portion of the people who work in your city are women and are people who are minorities, and we shouldn't be marginalizing people in those roles. Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I think it's really important. As the mayor of the city, look, Troy is 29% foreign-born. We're very diverse. We're very proud of that. But not only that, you know, I've served for 5 years as mayor. My first 4 years, I served with 5 women who were members of council and just one other man and me. One of them was African American, one of them was Chaldean. We never focused on, you know, their gender or their ethnic heritage or any of their cultural backgrounds. It was really about the work they'd done. And they were some of the smartest, most thoughtful, best council members we've ever had in the city of Troy. So I think it's a really big mistake to make this presidential election about whether or not Kamala Harris is a woman. We know she is. Whether or not she's black or half black or Indian, we know those things to be the case. Let's focus on the record of both the vice president and also the former president. I think that our society will be much better off if we can do that.
Wouldn't we benefit as the electorate, as voters, if there was a way for both of the parties to kind of put some of this away for a moment and talk about policy? Because ultimately, and you tell me, you run for office. What do people care about? What do people on the streets really care about? Do they care if someone's half Indian, half black, whether or not the former president thinks one way or the other of them? It matters what they're going to do for us, right?
Ultimately, and what they have done. So look at both of these candidates now have records that are pretty clear, and it's really easy to figure them out. I think, you know, it's a little different in local politics. First of all, I mean, full disclosure, right? What I do at the city of Troy is very different than what happens at the national level. So I think people are a little more dialed into local issues when it relates to their politicians and the candidates running. But we need to focus on the records of these people. They're so stark and so obvious, and I think that Republicans make a big mistake, or are potentially making a big mistake, to focus on Kamala Harris and, you know, what she looks like or what she sounds like, as opposed to what she's done or hasn't done. She's very beatable as a candidate based on her record. And you know, I'm a Republican, yes. I'm also the nonpartisan mayor of the city of Troy. My charter says that I have to stay nonpartisan. But I know as a Republican, we could do much better in this November election if we're focused on the policies of the vice president and not who she is as a person.
If you take a look at the policies of both former President Trump and Kamala Harris, you said it best. They're so stark. I know that Ms. Harris, the vice president, has been kind of left of center on a lot of her deals when it comes to the Green New Deal, climate change, all kinds of stuff. Wouldn't it benefit former President Trump to go after that and take the time and the oxygen to talk about that rather than this, right? That's what you're saying.
I think, and I think he has, and I think he's also waded into some of the other stuff. He's President Trump. He does a lot of things that make us kind of scratch our heads sometimes. That's no question. But are
people going to scratch their heads enough with his rhetoric and with some of the things that he says that they're going to finally, the people who are on the fence, say, you know what, I don't know if I want to vote for him? I mean, it's hurting him in a sense, isn't it?
And I think maybe that's what happened in like the city of Troy and Oakland County in 2020 and a lot of these suburban counties throughout the country. I mean, it seems to me that suburban counties that are heavily dominated by women who are voting, people of color, they don't respond well to those kind of personal attacks. And if you really talk about the policies and the issues, you're much more likely to garner their support and get their vote.
Carville said years ago, of course, a couple decades ago, it's the economy's stupid. The pocketbook issues are really, they're important to people. Ultimately, what do you think it is? Is it going to be that which will drive people to the polls and also make a decision based on the economy?
I think the economy still is it's always people's biggest indicator, what gets them to the polls for the most part. There's a lot going on now, right? I mean, the media plays a big role in what's in everyone's faces. everyone's got their phones out, gets kind of news updates all the time, so people are really inundated with information. But the economy is important. I think immigration is hugely important. Again, 29% foreign-born in the city of Troy. We face immigration issues, not like we face at the southern border, but immigration is always on the minds of our voters in the city of Troy. You know, the standard issues are also important. Healthcare, some of the women's rights. Although if you look at the statistic, I saw a Frank Luntz poll that showed how different people view those different issues. Abortion is really low on the list for certain voters. It's high for some, but for a lot of people, it ranks pretty low. So it's not always about the reproductive rights that the Democrats are talking about so much that I think is going to drive this election.
I want you to zoom out. You said you're the nonpartisan mayor who is a Republican, though. When you make policy decisions, you work with Democrats all the time on stuff. But I do want to make this clear that as a Republican, you probably have a strong opinion about this. What are some of the biggest mistakes that both the candidates have to avoid? Start with Kamala Harris.
Oh, I think she needs to. I mean, her record again is very clear. There's things that show that she was the most liberal member of the United States Senate when she was a senator. I think she needs to really move to the middle on some of these issues and show people that she's not the liberal, you know, Green New Deal type politician. That she's actually somebody that cares about your pocketbook, cares about people in our suburban communities in the Midwest. I mean, she really needs to do a lot of work in the Midwest to show that she's somebody that's going to be viable here.
And is that why the VP pick is more important, to find someone who's more moderate?
I think that's one of the reasons. I mean, I think it's hugely important, although Pennsylvania's not really if it is Shapiro, he's not really a Midwest governor. But I think that's why you saw so much interest in even Gretchen Whitmer, our governor, Governor Walz in Minnesota. Mark Kelly in Arizona is a different strategy, I think, but that's also, again, that goes to the immigration issue and how important that issue is for people. So I think the vice president needs to focus on, the things that were done well under the Biden-Harris administration, which there were some, obviously. I mean, as a Republican, sure. I can even say.
Well, and I know where you stand with that. And but let's talk about the other side. Yeah. Former President Trump. What are some mistakes that he has to avoid right now?
Well, you know, it's hard for me to kind of psychoanalyze President Trump and to deal with what he is.
But maybe policy-wise.
Policy-wise, I mean, again, he seems to poll really well when he talks about the economy, when he talks about immigration. I can't tell you, everybody who goes to the grocery store feels the pain, or the pain at the pump at the gas stations. Whether or not President Trump can solve those problems, I don't know, but he seems to be making a pretty good case that he can, or that people remember what it was like before COVID when he was president, that things were cheaper, easier to get, and things were a lot better in a lot of ways.
Whether you disagree or you agree with what this Republican mayor has to say, I think we all can get on board with what you started with, which is there's a decorum and decency this country was built on. If we can return to that, it shouldn't matter that I'm an Indian American anchor or a kid from Troy or whatever it is, 100%. Or that you're a white man. It matters what you bring to the table. Ethan Baker, the mayor of City of Troy, thanks for joining us here today.